This session, you'll hear from our customer Bonterra Technology about their decision to go all in on AWS, migrating workloads out of Azure. My name is Cam Hales. I'm a member of the Worldwide Specialist Organization at AWS. I help our public sector partners migrate and modernize their Microsoft workloads in AWS Cloud. So a quick look at the agenda. This is a real-world use case, so they'll be talking about a project that I think is still ongoing, but started last year, right around this time. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the points of difference that they considered when they were traveling down this path and deciding to work with us. And they'll share information about who Bonterra is. They have a really compelling mission. I think you'll be pleased to learn more about what they do. And then we'll hear a little bit more from Nick and Sandy about the footprint, the applications that were in scope and they were working to land. Some of the things that they considered from a service provider perspective. So what they'll refer to as a bakeoff, but some of the things that they were compared and considered when they were making their decision on where to land these workloads. The technical evaluation, so some of the technical points of difference that stood out to them. And then finally how they came to their decision, a retrospective, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. So to start, those of you that have had an opportunity to attend reInvent in the past may have had the pleasure of hearing from Andy Jassy when he was the CEO of AWS. He's now the CEO of Amazon, and he has this quote that we often reference when we speak internally and meet with customers. There's no compression algorithm for experience, right? And it's our experience that makes us different than any other provider that you may encounter in this space. We've been providing cloud services since 2006, right? So oftentimes many customers feel that we're the new player on the block. We're the incumbent on the block. We've been doing this longer than anybody else. And over that 18-year time frame, we've developed over 200 services and features, many of which you'll learn more about over the course of the next 4 days. Key example of this feature development and some of the ways in which we innovated our generative AI stack, right? So we created a stack to help meet customers where they were, right, or where you are. Whether that's taking advantage of turnkey Gen AI enhanced applications like our Amazon Q family of products, right? Whether it be for line of business, application development, analytics, or customer engagement. Or if you want to take advantage of pre-trained models through our Bedrock services. Or take advantage of our innovative infrastructure to train your own models and innovate on, customize your innovation experience. As I mentioned before, we meet customers where they are. And talking about experience, right? So we were the first provider to offer services for Windows and SQL Server. We launched our initial machine instances in 2008. So for over 16 years, Microsoft workloads have been a first-class citizen in AWS. So not only can you land your workloads in AWS and take advantage of a rich menu of services and features, but we also provide options for you to modernize off of those applications or those platforms should you decide to be more advantageous for your business and allowing you to scale and innovate, take advantage of the features within an AWS cloud. And our experience has also informed a very proven migration methodology. And you'll hear Nick and Sandy talk about that framework and how it factored into their decision to go all in on AWS. So I mentioned before that we have tools and resources. We have tools to help you assess your environment so that we have a full understanding of the applications and infrastructure that are in scope for migration, right? So you need to know what you're moving. Shadow IT always rears its head, right? I don't know how many customer conversations I participate in, and one of the responses when we review assessment data is, I didn't realize that was running, or I didn't know that this spoke to that, right? So that's part of the process when you're planning for an application migration. And then we have resources and methodologies that allow you to confidently plan that migration, right, based upon actual resource utilization. So not conjecture, but we're working with data that we've gathered through the assessment process to make sure that all of the critical items are considered in scope during the migration planning process. And then we spend time working with the technology teams and the constituents within your organization to make sure that they understand the impact of what this effort will entail. And we do that in such a way that we provide as least disruption to the business as possible. That's the goal, right? Something's going to change. We want to make sure that the teams are aware and prepared for that, and the users and your customers. And in doing so, awareness is part of the way that we minimize disruption to the organization, right? That's pre-migration, post-migration. We have tools that you can use to help automate or streamline the migration process. And you'll learn more about those things this week. And so we'll have some things to share later this week. And then the job's not done once the work is landed in AWS. We also have tools, processes, and resources available to help make sure that you're running in a right-sized environment, right? So your legacy environment may not be the best model for your future environment in AWS, right? There's more capability, there are other things you can consider, cloud scale, so on and so forth. So we want to make sure that you're running in the most performant and cost-efficient manner as possible. So that is our day one focus. And then documenting what's been migrated, the as-is state, for a couple reasons. One, the teams that migrate aren't necessarily the teams that maintain and operate infrastructure. And we're an innovation and inventing company, right? So we need to understand the baseline and the current situation from which those innovation activities will launch. These are just a few examples of the ways that we support customers in their cloud migration and modernization journeys, and these were key in their decision-making process. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nick, and he'll talk about their migration.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Kozlov. I'm a Senior Vice President of Cloud Optimization in Bonterra. With me, there is Sandy Van, and he's a Senior Vice President of SaaS Operations. So a bit about us as a company. We have quite a bit of a portfolio of products that we run. And these products are of different sizes, shapes, and in the same time, they run in different locations. So if you look, and essentially, we're one of the second largest and fastest growing social good software company. A 20,000 feet view of operations, we have 18 products. We run in 5 rented data centers. We have 150 vendors, the third-party applications that require for the maintenance of our products. We have 5 main DBs, but at the same time, always we have other smaller DBs where we use in different places like IAC. So we're talking here mostly for the database types for the products themselves. We run in 3 clouds, and we have 8 major languages. So how does our data center footprint look like? So you can see that we run, we have 5 data centers, and we have quite a bit of load already in AWS. We also have Azure, and we also had Heroku. So you could actually see that the complexity of maintaining all of this product is quite intense for the maintenance teams and for the software development teams. One of the products which is presented here, you could see the complexity as well. And this is how it looked, this one of the products, this is how it looked in 2023. It was running across 3 clouds in 2 data centers, 1,000 cores, 1.2 terabytes of RAM, and everything as we're dealing with payments, everything has to be secure. So there's a bunch of different networking, firewalls. It is quite interesting how the product worked and how all the teams actually knew how to maintain it well. Our CEO Scott Brighton, he always says that multi-cloud creates an abstraction, and it's quite true for us, especially with such an intense footprint. So we sat down and we said, okay, so what do we want to actually do? We wanted to make sure that we go to a cloud provider and there's supposed to be a goal. So here are a few goals which we wanted to cover on a high level from a business perspective. We obviously wanted to standardize everything in one place. To maintain so many products across so many different data centers is always a hustle, trouble, and keeping the SLAs high is always interesting. We could not use teams across the products because we had teams that were working with specific products. They were the subject matter experts, but moving them to another product was always a lengthy process. And obviously, one of the things that we wanted to do is to pay less. Although once you buy the hardware in the data centers, it is kind of a virtual situation that you're just paying for the data center itself, but at the same time, hardware breaks, and in the same time, you have to go and maintain it, and we always had to make sure that it is easier for the engineers to know one single infrastructure and easier to retrain them in different places, and in the same time, it would be cheaper. So what are the technical goals here? We want to use the cloud services logically, meaning that we don't want to go all in and use as many services as possible. We didn't want to run in a proof of concept constant turnover. We wanted to monitor everything in one place. We wanted to have one single CI/CD for all the products because having so many products which came into our company over time, you can just imagine how many different CI/CD types we had in the company. We did want to have an IEC standard approach. The ideal goal is for us to move to Kubernetes clusters, and definitely we didn't want to lift and shift. So at one point we decided to sit down and we had two choices, whether we should go to Azure, where we had already some loads running there, or we go AWS all in. So we started discussing with the providers and making sure that there would be a cost comparison, and we also needed to make tech evaluation from our side to figure out how are we going to actually move to any place, because we were kind of broken into a decision of going to one place or another. There are benefits in both, but this decision, a hard decision, should have been taken. So what are the technical requirements for us to go into the Azure or AWS? We wanted to have granular control of the workers if we would be going to the Kubernetes. We needed to have a single tenant control plane because of the security and isolation of the products. We didn't want to have any automated upgrades, as we had this situation with Azure Kubernetes AKS clusters where the automatic upgrades happened, and that didn't benefit the loads that were running there. And we wanted to get advanced metrics in one place, so we would be able to pull as many metrics as we could, and we would understand them. And we would be able to standardize those metrics across all our products, so the teams, the level 1 teams or level 3 teams would be able to come to those places and get enough information to make a decision how to improve the SLAs, or if there was an outage or a downtime, how to resolve the situation in a promptly manner. And obviously, the easy and reliable networking setup for large data loads. So we sat down and decided to look at the technical evaluation. What do we have? What knowledge do we have across our teams? And we came to a point that 50% of our teams knew AWS better. In the same time, when we were doing the pre-migration infrastructure distribution, we also saw that we already had 45% of AWS, which was a big advantage. The database distribution, we had mostly open source DBs, although we had quite a bit of Microsoft SQL enterprises, but still the majority was the open source, and the operating system dependency we were running with Linux mostly. So we decided to go for AWS, and we said, okay, so what are the technically, it's because EKS provides enough isolation for our loads, and we don't have any automated upgrades, so we were able to control the infrastructure as we want. We were lucky that one of our data centers was running in Markley, and we were lucky that Markley had an out-of-the-box direct connect, because we needed to make sure that we have, apart from the VPN connectivity which we had established between the data centers, we needed to have a very steady traffic coming in and out. So it would be easier for us to set up. And team knows AWS, as mentioned, metrics which we were using for the CloudWatch agent, and we could pump as many metrics as we want. And we made sure that we optimized that we don't have an excessive bill coming in. We had fewer Windows machines than Linux. On the business side, AWS provided a much superior proposal. There was an awesome discount, which we really appreciated, with a caveat of we needed to make sure that we migrate a lot of infrastructure into AWS through a short period of time. Again, our migration path was not fast because we needed to get to AWS fast, and AWS was pushing us, but more because we knew what we were doing. So we had a good team that is able to make strategic decisions. And I'm always skeptical of making technical proof of concept decisions when we're going to any cloud with just experience saying where we're heading, what we're going to do. That's why we decided to go for Kubernetes and not ECS clusters or some other infrastructure. And that's why we decided to go for an IEC that is majority of the team already knew, to make sure that the ramp up of our products in the new cloud would be better and more understandable by everyone, not to make a lot of mistakes. We have a prestigious technical support from AWS, and we were migrating from the data centers or from Azure. We had the solution architects of AWS on the speed dial, and when we knew what questions to ask them, they were able to come back to us with very relevant answers and managed to actually push us forward to make sure that we don't make mistakes. They stayed with us nights and days and make sure that we actually migrate and nothing breaks. We got the teams from States, from AWS, from Paris, from UK, so it was global, just proper technical people that knew their stuff. And also the AWS marketplace for our vendors was awesome, because as I mentioned in the beginning, we have 150 vendors, and we were comparing the Azure and AWS, and we were thinking, how do we need to control all of these vendors? It means we have a lot of quotes coming in, payments going out, problems with the vendors or their software. You need to make sure, how do we control all of that? How do you support all of this? So we found out that for our vendors, majority of the vendors were already in the marketplace of AWS rather than Azure. So for us, it was also a big deal breaker. So now is November 2024, and what we have managed to achieve, we've migrated majority of the products over to AWS. Actually, this happened within, I would say, 8 to 10 months with hard work from a lot of teams. We're talking about software engineers, DevOps, operations teams, and everyone worked flawlessly in this regard to make sure that we get over the line of getting the software into the cloud we want. One of the products that we migrated, here is just a brief architecture, how we got the products in. And although you would see here that some of the services are not AWS native, it's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. But in the same time, we know there are dependencies on the customers. In this specific diagram, we wanted to get off fastly, but we couldn't. For a simple reason that we have 300 domains to change for 300 customers that have a vanity domains, DNS. And therefore, we would have to call all of them, so we decided to leave it as is for now, for the time being, until we come to a point, talk to the customer success teams to make sure that all the comms go out, when there won't be Giving Tuesday, as tomorrow is happening, making sure that people are comfortable with those changes, and slowly, gradually, we move it off. So it doesn't have to happen overnight. And so we did 80-20 rule. We migrated 80% of the loads to one place, 20%. We're keeping that documented, and we have all the processes in place to make sure that this work still happens. So until now, we already are in AWS, and there are a number of things that we took advantage of. The direct connectivity. Definitely, we saved 50% of the cost for a number of products once we migrated from Azure, from data centers, over to AWS. We started, thanks to the non-lift and shift approach, we gained more knowledge. Unfortunately, some of our products, well, not necessarily unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, some of our products are more than 20 years old. Therefore, there's a lot of knowledge that sometimes gets missed out, not documented, or someone leaves who was keeping this bucket for themselves, which they were working on. And so the lift and shift approach was always an easy one, but it was always a tactical decision. We understood that on the first nodes of the migrations, we came to a point of understanding that if we would do the lift and shift, we will not understand how we will have to rebuild the CI/CD, how we're going to maintain those products. We needed to make sure that we would be able to maintain and improve our SLAs once based already in AWS. And thanks to that documentation which we've built and gained all the knowledge, we actually we already did a number of compliance audits, PCI, SOC 2, ISO. These are just a few audits which we did. And when we built the documentation after the migrations, the auditors came to us and they said, well, we reduced the time for the audits, let's say, from 3 months to a week. And that was a great improvement for us. And I did personally a few audits myself where I was brought in as a subject matter expert on those products. And the auditors said, we wish it was with every product as yours when it came to the migrated ones. As I mentioned, the AWS supported us throughout all this process, and it was intense, I would not lie, because the teams in AWS needed to understand how we operate. We make a decision and we follow through, and it was time-consuming for them, but they put in the time, and we made this happen, which is great. We also took advantage of the migration acceleration program, and that, although I've been working with AWS for a decade, I have never actually used it. And here we used, and I would say we got 6-7 figures of credits. And we moved 50% of the vendors to the marketplace, which saved a ton of time for us now. We can have everything in one place. So our forecasted footprint now is, this is where we're going to be in Q2. We have only, let's put it this way, 1.5 products left that have to be migrated over. It takes time, and we stopped a few migrations over the time due to the fact that there were a number of events happening this year. So we are moving forward, and this is where we're planning to be. Well, not even planning, we're going to be there, as we already did the majority, 7 of the products migrated over the 10-month period.
And with that, we thank you for your time. We appreciate it.